guys, the John McNamara host of Runnin Vegas. We're talking local sports, business, real estate. If you guys like to see, subscribe, follow us on runninvegas.com. I got my co-host,
runninvegas.com.
George Hernandez in the house.
What's going on, everyone? Happy Thursday.
Special guest, Krystal Goddard.
Yes,
thanks for being
hi.
in the house.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being
I
here.
appreciate it.
So tell us about you, your story, where you're from.
Me, my story. I've been in Vegas almost 20 years. I came out in 2007 with an ex-boyfriend, was in food and beverage, worked my way into performing here in Las Vegas. I've been a professional singer for over 15 years now here in Vegas. I've performed probably
You're awesome.
every casino.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's so
you're
nice of you to say. Every casino and done all the things. So I kind of fell into it and got really lucky and have been doing that for quite a while now. So.
Yeah, and to give you guys context, how we met is through a Broker's Open, and you
Yeah.
were singer there. You're good vibes. You have like the jams are going. You feel in a good mood. You go in the house, and then and that's really fun. And then we touched base, and it was really cool. So John and I read the ADHD Advantage because I was diagnosed, but I didn't agree with the diagnosis.
Really?
when I was 17, so I didn't. Yeah, because they were trying to like give me medication, and I didn't want to
I
do
get
any
it.
of that.
It's different when you're a teenager.
Yeah, and I'm like, no, I think it's a mindset thing. But now I've learned to just kind of accept it. But anyways, in that there was a chapter where it says how ADD and ADHD manifest different in women, and that's why you are here.
Yeah.
Because you're going to talk firsthand about that. So, yeah, tell us a little bit more about that. It's like just how it manifests different in women to men, because that's something completely new to me.
Yeah, I don't understand.
Yeah, it does
Right.
present very differently. There's, I was late diagnosed about 2 years ago, in my early 40s, which is happening to a lot of women around the world. And the reason we kind of slipped through the cracks, when you think of ADHD, you think, oh, the hyper boy in the classroom that like can't sit still, or, it's kind of misbehaving. So they're a lot more physically hyperactive.
Right.
Women, girls are going to be more mentally hyperactive. So we're going to maybe not be bouncing off the walls, but our brains are going a million miles a minute. So we typically fly under the radar. A lot of ADHD kids are gifted. So you can still be doing really well in school or have a high IQ or getting good grades and still mentally be very hyperactive and very much struggling.
Right.
It's just not as obvious to people. So
Yeah.
what's happening now is women are getting into their 40s. They're getting to a point in their life where your hormones are changing, and that exacerbates ADHD symptoms. So whereas you might have been able to kind of just get through before with your symptoms, now they're so intensified that no, you're no longer managing and you're not really sure what's happening. So there's women that actually have reached out to me saying that they thought they had early onset dementia, which is terrifying.
Wow.
Because they just
That's
didn't,
scary.
they couldn't understand like why their lives just all of a sudden are falling apart. So you're seeing a lot of women around this age getting diagnosed right now, which is crazy.
So there's two things that's funny, because you were saying how the boys are hyperactive, and in that book it talks about that, and they're like in girls, and it was kind of talking general, but in girls they're like when they're teens or younger, it's sometimes their outlet is being creative, and that translates to gossip. It's
That makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, oh, that makes sense, because it's just them just being hyper. It's none of it's real, right? In your head it is, but it's like, with the boy it's just like kind of just off the wall, off the ropes, or whatever.
That's interesting. The creative part I definitely identify with. Creativity, I would say, is probably my strongest attribute tied to ADHD. But the gossip thing makes sense because they talk about how, we can kind of create little like fantasy lands in our minds. And that's part of our, we're more called like daydreamers.
Right.
And so it makes sense that would turn into gossip. And
so
storytelling.
It's funny because I have a very dear friend that has a daughter that's going to go to college, and she has ADD. So I let him borrow the book, and he's like, you read this and you're like, oh my God, it's like I've been kind of just judging this, and it's like, this is exactly it. Well, we went through it, right? And then he's like, I realized it's like certain things he would take it personal. He's like, oh, he just interrupts. He doesn't care what I have to say, but I'm just excited. So then I get overstimulated, and I'm like,
It's reframing. I just thought you were a jerk.
Yeah.
I'm like, this kid. I'm like,
That's what I think one of the hardest parts is, because I think I try to, be kind and respectful, and I think I'm an overall like nice human being, and I definitely have been accused of like, being rude or interrupting. And before I was diagnosed, I had no idea really that I was even doing it. And what I've learned, and I'm sure you're familiar as well, you get a thought mid-conversation, and your biggest fear is that if you don't get that thought out right away, it's going to be gone forever.
Right.
So you just interject and you just say it, and you cut people off and interrupt people. Yeah. And you're like, but you don't understand. If I don't say it right now, it's gone forever.
Yeah. And then I'm going to like just think about that all day, that question. What was it? I'm like, it was important in my head, and I needed it to, maybe in boys we do it too, because me, I need the whole story, or the whole story needs to make sense. If not, I can't let it go. And like whether it's how to do something in business or stories with friends, I'm like, I need, how did it smell? How was it wearing? Or what was the tonality? Where was it at? What was the setting? And if not, I'm not gathering the whole. I almost feel like the person's like omitting stuff on purpose, and it's not.
That's where the first conversations are really good to understand all that.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
We care a lot about the why, because if you. Tell me if this ever works for you, but if you've ever been at work and a boss has told you to do something and you want to ask why, or what the reasoning is, and if you ever get or by your parents because I said so. Yeah. Well, that can lead to defiance, because you don't you're asking really for clarification.
Right.
Like, what's the reasoning? That helps you understand what it is that you're doing and why, and it helps you get the motivation to start that task.
Right.
But if you're left with all of these questions, it's a lot harder to even get started on those things.
Yep.
So it's really beneficial. It helps in school, with parenting, in the workplace, if you can just give a little bit of a reason, like, hey, I need you to do this because of this. And then you're like, oh, okay, got it. Let's go. Let's do that.
And then you see the value. And if not, it's just like, okay, why am I doing this? I'm not doing it to just kill time.
Yeah.
So you were saying earlier that you were diagnosed 2 years ago. Yeah. So I know for boys, usually it's as early as 4 to 6, which I may or may not agree with that part, because I think it's, I don't know how you feel about medication, but I'm considering it now, but I haven't been on medication for a while.
Okay.
Since I was 21,
okay.
20. But what's the diagnosis, do you know, for girls or for women? Like, because for boys it's really early, and then they're putting them on meds, which they're Ritalin.
And there's a lot, there's so many differing opinions about this. My personal opinion. So in order to have ADHD, you've got to have diagnostic criteria present before, I think the cutoff is around maybe 13 to 14 for girls. It's a little bit earlier for boys. Okay. So you've got to have those symptoms present during those earlier stages of life. Okay. And as far as medication goes, for me personally, when I got diagnosed and I started taking medication, it was a total game changer for me. It saved my life. Like, it changed so much for me. Yeah, 100%.
Tell me more about that, because that's where I'm at right now.
It really just, so when you're talking about stimulant medication, right? So someone who is not ADHD, take a stimulant, whether it be drugs or Adderall or coffee or whatever it may be, it's going to have a certain impact on your body and your brain.
If you don't have AD, you're hyper.
Right. That's why, a lot of college kids will do it, so that they can stay amped in order to study and get through their finals. Yeah. My first experience, the very first time I ever took Adderall, it was legitimately the calmest I'd ever felt in my whole life.
So that's me. That's why I'm considering it now.
Yeah. It was having hundreds of thoughts in my brain all at once, going down to maybe half of that, and being like, oh my gosh, this is what it's like to be able to just focus on 12 thoughts instead of 93 thoughts. It just simplifies that. And I liken it to having this hamster running on a wheel in my brain my whole life, and someone just let it off for the first time. Yeah. And it just gave me so much clarity. And I'm like, oh my God, because at the time when you're not diagnosed, you think everyone's brain works like that.
Right,
And you're
that's
like,
the problem.
well, why are other people managing it so much better than I
Right.
am? What's wrong with me? And then you realize that that's not how everyone's brain
So-
works. But I think medication is, go ahead.
He has a question. I could go on
Yeah,
and
let's
on.
keep going.
Yeah.
Just to answer your initial question,
Yeah.
because I
I'll start writing them
obviously
down.
get off track.
I'm sorry to him.
Medication is it can be very useful. I don't think that there's anything wrong with medication, but I also don't think there's anything wrong with trying every other method you can,
Right.
Just trying to manage whatever symptoms you can, learning whatever tools you can to manage it.
Right.
When that feels like maybe it's not enough, then maybe try medication. And
Right.
it's going to be with things like stimulant medication, it's out of your system the following day. So it's,
Right.
if it doesn't work for you, if you don't like it, it doesn't help, then don't take it.
Yeah.
But I don't think that there's really anything innately harmful. I'm not a doctor by any means, but
Yeah.
for me, it has the pros outweigh the cons
Right.
for sure.
And now as adults, we can make that decision. I have 5 more questions. Go ahead. I know.
Well, it's interesting you said that because when I think I was like 25, 27 years ago, and somebody gave me Adderall, and we're at like a bar, and I'm thinking, oh, this is if I've never done it before. That's what happened to me. I got super like focused and calm, and
That's
I was
me.
and that's when I found out, because when we were younger, there wasn't a thing of ADHD. There was no understanding, but that's when I knew I had some form of it. So,
Yeah, isn't it interesting?
it's super. I never did it again because it was kind of like my superpower. I can get really focused, but my
Yeah.
brain is, like you said, that hamster wheel.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's great, but sometimes at 2 o'clock in the morning, it's not great.
Yeah, it's
But-
like a 3-ring circus
Yeah,
at all
yeah.
times.
It's constantly
It's-
ABCD.
there's, like, no
You
shut
know,
off. Yeah.
it's also, that's why I'm like, for kids, I think they just need a different outlet for medication and not medication or the Benadryl or whatever, the Ritalin. When I was 18, I was on Adderall for a year, but then I felt like I also wasn't like feeling a lot, and it was weird. And then they switched to like Xanax, and then the Xanax made me feel the same way.
Interesting.
Now, as I've gotten older, the Adderall, I'm like, oh, I'm like focused for the next 5 hours. This is good. I'm like,
Yeah.
and then I can like go through life, and I'm like, oh, very accomplished. It was like, yeah. So then it's funny because my therapist just brought her up. She's like, maybe you need, because I'm on something right now that helps with serotonin, and it's like, yeah, maybe you need. But now that I'm older and I understand it, I think I know how to gauge it. To back then, I didn't know what is this that I'm feeling. And most people, like the party kids, right? They're like, oh, we're gonna have fun. I'm like, I'm just focused and I can think at one thought at a time.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I
You're
don't
like,
know.
isn't this supposed to
when
be
is the
fun?
party going on? It is. And I'm like, this is how the rest of the world is.
But that's why I think I like
Yeah.
drinking alcohol or beers because it slows my brain down.
Right.
So my ADHD.
That was my vice for a very long time.
Okay,
As a performer, being on stage and working in bars and being around alcohol, and having a certain amount of anxiety that came with performing, I used alcohol 100% as a way to self-medicate and to just calm down that chaos that I was always feeling. Once I was diagnosed and started taking medication, I rarely feel the urge to drink. Hardly ever. And it's
I wonder
because
if that would happen to me. That's
those
crazy.
symptoms
I
are
like
being
my
more
Aperol
managed.
Spritz.
Yeah. And drinking was a very regular part of my life, and
Yeah.
now it's very, very rarely that I do. And even when I do, I'm like, I'm just not really
Yeah.
a
Wow.
fan anymore.
When you take it, do you feel like a stress relief from it, or
When I drink,
no? Sorry, the Adderall. Or your medication, whatever.
it's hard to say. I mean, I think stress is just kind of a different thing. I think I take medication for anxiety as well, so I think that really helps a little bit more with those types of side effects or those types of symptoms. I think more so it just helps you focus your thoughts more, and it also helps with task initiation. Just being, this is where I'm getting tongue-tied. This happens too. This is an ADHD thing. It just helps keep you more focused and more on track, and being able to kind of prioritize what you need to do for the day instead of feeling like you're all over the place. So it just gives you more of a sense of, I would say, more calm.
Okay.
But people react to medication differently too.
Yeah.
So I have a friend that's diagnosed ADHD. She's actually a a counselor and a specialist.
Okay.
And she can't take any type of medication. She doesn't respond well to any of it.
Yeah, there's some
and
people,
so
it's scary.
For her, it's natural. She just tries to do whatever
Holistic.
she can to manage it.
Yeah.
And for me, medication works wonders. So it just kind of depends.
It depends on the
We're
person.
all so different, right? So,
Yeah. I want to know what were your, you kind of touched on it, but what were your symptoms? So if there's other girls or women that are maybe thinking I'm just going through hormonal change, or maybe
Right.
at what point did you go down this journey and you're like, hey, let me figure this
Like,
out?
what was
And
the
you're like, and
catalyst?
you got, yes.
Yeah. So honestly, I was at the Route 91 concert, we'll
Yeah.
call it, in 2017. And from that, I had some auditory PTSD that I was
Okay.
struggling with. So years later, and I had, gone to therapy and done whatever I could to kind of work through that and manage it. And years later, I still felt like I was having these sensory sensitivities that we're just not getting any better. And so I thought that I had unresolved or untreated PTSD. And so I found a therapist. I started going to therapy on a weekly basis. Through that progression, I think it was maybe 9 or 10 months in, that we determined it wasn't PTSD, it was ADHD. And it was just this light bulb that was like, oh my God, now my whole life makes sense. Like I can look back at certain interactions through my entire life and make sense of it and understand those interactions and things that I had maybe been confused about. And I'm like, oh my God, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I found out, is that I had these symptoms that were just not getting better. And I wanted to figure out a way
We have a
to manage
similar
it.
story, not with the auditory thing, but you know how I refuse the ADD part, and I'm like, no, and it might have came up a couple more times, and that's why I think it's just a funny story now, because it was always in my health records. So when I
Okay.
moved to Nevada, I'm like, we're starting fresh. It's like, but it like comes back up somehow. And, so I read the ADHD book when I went on a cruise to like just relax. And every chapter was like, oh my, I just laughed the whole time. And I'm like, I can't refuse. The thing is, I had a negative stigma towards it. And I'm like, I just didn't want to be, in my head, it was maybe like a medical condition or a mental condition. And I don't want to be, oh my man, and I already kind of have anxiety and I get like panic attacks. And I'm like, now let's add this to the list. So it was a lot of self-judgment. However, since I've accepted it, I'm like, okay, I do need to try to interrupt less, or even here, right? I don't need a, or repeat and affirm always. So yeah, it's crazy how we go through that journey, and then it's like you're like, you know what, they were right.
I think too that book is really good for relationships. So if you have any relationships, giving that book to somebody really helped, because I know it helped our friendship. Like I don't even know if him and I are still friends if we both didn't read that.
Yeah,
book.
it's
So you're like,
massive.
seriously.
Wow.
Just the understanding of where
Yeah.
someone's coming from, and understanding that they're not. It's not a moral failure. It's not that someone is intentionally trying to be rude or disrespectful. It is literally a difference in how your brain works and how it experiences the world.
Yeah.
And ADHD, untreated, undiagnosed, can be really, really difficult for relationships when there's not a level of understanding. And that's why there's so many negative consequences to untreated ADHD. Relationship failure is a really big part of that.
Yeah, marriage is like hard.
Divorce is one of the, there are 7 negative long-term effects of untreated ADHD, one of being divorce, there's bankruptcy, academic failure, homelessness, substance abuse, incarceration, and then unfortunately suicide, because people just, they have a hard time connecting with other
That's
people.
crazy.
They don't
I didn't know that last
understand.
part.
Yeah, they don't understand why they have good intentions, but it's not being received that way.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this fact, but by the age of 10, children with ADHD have heard, on average, 20,000 more either corrective or negative comments
I
than
believe
their
it.
neurotypical peers. And so think what
Wow.
that does to your self-esteem. And then that's kind of ongoing. That's by the age of 10. So
Right.
you're already at a very developmental time in your life, struggling with self-esteem because you get this constant message of,
now I
I'm
know
doing
I'm so
something wrong.
self-conscious.
Yeah, like you think you're defective somehow.
Yeah, you're like, oh, what happened here?
and there are, and to your point, being diagnosed at 17, I was misdiagnosed at 19 with generalized anxiety disorder.
Yeah.
And you have this kind of defiance about not wanting something to be wrong. I would flush my medication down the toilet because I was like, I don't need this. I can fix this myself. Yeah. I don't need that. When really, it's not a bad thing. These are just the way that people are, and we struggle with these things,
right.
And it's okay, and we should be able to treat these things without feeling bad about it. And we're
right.
We've come a long way, I think, with the general public and society, but we're not quite where we should be.
I think that's why it's so important, these conversations, to break that stigma. That's why I was so happy for you to be here. I'm like, man, we're a year in, and I'm like, this one's like a good topic.
Yeah.
And me living with it, I didn't even think about it. You too, right? It's like,
for sure. Yeah, mine sounds
so grateful
intense
you're
as
here.
yours. Yeah, and I'm already learning stuff because I've heard when they get older, they have menopause, and I have friends and their husbands, and it's caused divorces or.
Yeah.
I've never heard ADHD and how it affects women in their 40s.
Yeah.
So
right.
It's just something good to know to tell my friends or my buddies, hey, it may be ADHD too.
Right.
So, you're not wrong. There are podcasts, I can send you some links that literally talk about how much more difficult it is for women, especially when you add in the hormonal changes. Perimenopause and menopause are difficult on their own.
Right. Yeah.
And then you add in these ADHD symptoms, and it's every day can be a struggle, and especially when you don't have the support of the people that you're closest to, simply because there's a breakdown in understanding, that can make you feel all the more isolated and alone going through this really difficult time. So I think having these conversations is so important. There's so much the general public does. There's so much I didn't know before I got diagnosed. I really had no understanding of
I need to dive in more
of
to
what it was. There's so
Yeah.
much information available, but we don't really go looking for it
Right.
until it affects us personally.
Right.
So I think that's why it's important to have these conversations. There's so many people that are struggling unnecessarily. It doesn't really have to be that way.
Right.
And can I ask you, do you still have panic attacks and anxiety? Do you still deal with that?
I haven't had one since 2 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I had panic attacks my whole life growing up.
Yeah.
I was very
they're the worst.
anxiety ridden.
Yeah.
And then I started taking the anxiety medication at 19, and I would say that it helped a little bit, but it was still always there. I still had panic attacks.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Since I have been diagnosed and medicated for ADHD, I have not had one panic attack. And
Wow.
so for me, I was misdiagnosed. I know.
I know. I'm like,
So, and you can have both. You can
we're going to have a second part to this.
100%.
Yeah.
You still got 7 minutes.
You can have
I
an
have
anxiety.
20 questions. Yeah.
I know, I do too.
Okay.
You can have an anxiety disorder along with ADHD. You can have both, and you can have depression and bipolar and all of these other, comorbidities. But it is also possible that your anxiety is a symptom of untreated ADHD.
Right.
So
because
who
we're
knows
just
that if
making
you
stuff
start
up in our
medication
head.
and then your anxiety goes, my anxiety went away. That may not be the case for everyone, but it is possible.
Well, my therapist I have right now, she's not a psychiatrist, but I do have a psychiatrist as well.
Me too, and I love him too.
Yeah, no, me too. I have the best therapist. And she was saying, she's like, hey, you might want to look into the Adderall again. She was claiming the same thing. So now I feel like it's three times from somebody else, just the universe telling me hey, look at. And now that I know what's going on, I'm not judging the medication as much like when I was younger. So that's good to hear though, because I never correlate being creative in my head with, hey, that's what's causing the anxiety. It's because you're thinking worst case scenario, and then that story turns into this whole movie.
Oh yeah, we catastrophize. 100%.
Yeah.
I would recommend, so I had three, this is 7 years ago, I had 3 panic attacks in a row. I found, it's called I Love Panic Attacks. It's an audio you listen to. It's 10 trainings, about 45, 60 minutes. So anybody out there, you're having panic attacks, it gives you the tools to be able to deal with it. And to this day, I have not had a panic attack. But it was
awesome.
I would just go on, I go on listing appointments every day. I had a panic attack on a listing appointment. And I'm like, if I can't do this, I don't have a living anymore.
Yeah.
And I got the listing. I have no idea how. I couldn't even breathe. So I'm just like, please sign. But I love panicattacks.com. I think it's like a $200 audio. It was incredible. I learned a lot.
Sounds
through
worth
it.
every penny.
Every penny.
It
It's
can
10,
be
it's
so
10
debilitating.
sessions, but it's a guy that was getting
45 minutes or 4 to 6
45 to 60 minutes each
minutes.
session.
Okay.
But this man was getting panic attacks. I think he's like in Europe or something, Eastern Europe. He was getting panic attacks almost every day about everything. So it's a really great, just a thought. Like, there's other ways. There's tools in place. Like one of them is when I'm feeling that anxiety, like that, you know, that breathing when you feel it coming.
For me, it's lack thereof.
Yeah,
like my heart starts going, I'm like, oh, this is
one of the best things you can do is like, great, let's have a panic attack. Let's have fun with it. Like I'm around the people that I care and I love, and I do that, I'm gonna be okay. It goes away like that almost every single time.
And I think when you're in a safe, you feel like you're in a safe and supported environment, that it makes all the difference.
Yes.
And to that point, one of the questions you had positioned was, you know, are there, you know, advantages or superpowers to having ADHD? And of course, absolutely there are. There are things that we can be really brilliant at, whether it's creativity or outside the box thinking or problem solving or things like that. But I think what it comes down to is the environment that you're in and what your support system is. Because I look at Simone Biles, right?
Yeah.
She is diagnosed ADHD, very vocal about it. And she grew up in an environment that was incredibly supportive. You know, they really nurtured her in every aspect that she needed to be nurtured in to succeed, and look what she was able to do. On the flip side, you can take someone that's highly misunderstood, criticized, you know, parents maybe don't understand what's going on with the child. They grow up in an environment where they feel very unsupported, and you know, the opposite of that is maybe they end up in prison,
right?
Or worse.
They call it challenging kids, right?
Yeah. So environment is such a huge part of what ends up transpiring with the ADHD diagnosis.
Yeah, because I think I need to be stimulant. Well, there was two things, right? There's one, like we can, like as far as detail, I'm very detail oriented.
Yeah,
like,
me
and
too.
it drives me crazy.
Big
I'm
time.
like, oh, this is like what normal people wouldn't see. I do, and I'm like stuck on it. But
I say that all the time. I see things that a lot of people don't see, and I can
like,
see what ends up happening in the future before it even happens.
Right, and that's part of just being in tune also with your gut. And I'm like, where people don't see certain things, or that little like smirk, or that little like face, you know, of whatever emotion, you're like, you process it. But going back to the environment part, do you think living here in Vegas is a pro advantage? Because I feel like it is, because I'm like, there's a lot going on. I go to a little town, and I grew up in California, in the Bay Area, San Francisco, and there's always something going on, so it kept me going. But if I'm somewhere where it's too quiet, or it's not a lot going on, my head starts getting very creative with everything that's going on, and I'm like, okay, we need to sensationalize. I'm bored. I need a dopamine hit. Do you get that, or?
Yeah. So to your point, I'm from Kansas. I'm from the Midwest. It doesn't get like a whole lot more boring than that, right?
Okay.
Nothing against
I've never
Kansas.
been,
It was a great place to grow up,
Upstate New York.
you know what happens. You'll read about a lot of times in the Midwest, places that maybe don't have as much going on. Substance abuse and things like that are going to be more prevalent because we don't have as many things to capture the attention. So yes, I think Vegas can be, you know, beneficial just because there's no shortage of things going on, right? So you're not going to get bored.
Right.
But there's also a lot more ways to get in trouble.
That is true. Yeah, I never think about that because I'm not a gambler. I drink, but
Yeah. So for someone
then you have
with
access
ADHD who's not managing it, there's all kinds, you know, like gambling, substances, all these different things. But it definitely can be a huge advantage to have all of these different things to focus on, you know, different hobbies and different kinds of jobs. I mean, there's so many different things. So there's pros and cons.
Okay, yeah, I didn't think about the cons part. Yeah, I don't gamble at all, so.
I don't really either.
Yeah,
very
so
rare.
like,
only like after a gig while I'm waiting for dinner.
Yeah,
like
or something.
A 20 or something, but.
He's a little smirk. It's so funny. Well, it is so crazy.
I'm enjoying you guys.
57 seconds. I had one more question, but now I'm like spacing it because now I looked at the time. We were talking environment. What was it? I can't. Anything
It'll
else you
come
want
to
to
you.
close
If we
with?
can save it for part 2.
Yeah.
I think we got a lot for part 2 already set
Just
up.
thank you so much for having me on and allowing me to talk about this.
Oh, you're
it's
on Instagram?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like all your handle.
My handle. Oh, so
Rick,
I'll be
put that up,
launching.
please.
Yes,
be
tell us all
launching
the
a
good things.
podcast specifically about neurodevelopmental disorders, ADHD, autism, dyslexia. We'll be interviewing medical professionals and diagnosed members of the community to talk about their experiences. The YouTube is already up. It's Masking for a Friend podcast. Masking for a Friend podcast. And the Instagram is under the same handle. You can connect on both of those areas. That should be launching this summer once we have episodes taped. They're just working on some technical aspects, but it will be arriving soon so we can continue this conversation.
Yeah,
awesome. We're
I
excited
have a
for you.
friend. I'll introduce you to somebody. He's getting a little on my nerves lately, but I do still love him. But he runs a really cool gym for kids that have autism. So
Oh my gosh, I have to meet this person.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So
That's
yeah,
amazing.
I'll
I
make
love
that introduction, even though he does get on my nerves sometimes. But he owes me dinner.
okay.
Okay, we're wrapping up.
We're
I
going to
guess.
wrap it up. Like my co-host, Mr. George Hernandez. Guys, check out Krystal. Have a great day.
All right, thank you guys.